Episode 38, The Diamond Queen at Montgomery Hall, Storyville Part 3. Fair dues warning. This is an adult podcast made for adults, and we cover historical events some might blush at or feel uncomfortable over. If you are not an adult, or an adult who prefers not to listen to some topics that are a bit more on the naughty side, I suggest clicking off now. For the rest of you, hello, welcome. Are you ready to pay for it? Me too. Before we get to that though, if you are into my spicy history takes, please consider subscribing on whatever platform is your choosing. It helps me out a lot here on paying for it. Thank you. Now, it's time to get to the red light district. I'm ready if you are.
I got something between my legs that'll make a dead man come. Oh, that. I got something between my legs that'll make a dead man come. Oh, that. I'm gonna turn back my mattress and let you all my springs. I want you to blind me, daddy, till the bell do ring. Oh, daddy, I want you to shade the drive.
Hello, my name is Summer, and this is Paying for It. Thank you for being here for episode 38. Okay, I was gone for a bit, and I am so sorry about that. But listen, I moved, and I legit had no time. Don't think I wasn't sad and didn't have this on the back of my mind the entire time. I missed this, and I was very excited to get back to it, especially since I had some big plans for the new setup, the whole thing, you know? The entire time I've been thinking about how I can make paying for it better. Moving is hard, but look, we have our own recording room. I mean, I'm so very excited. And so, welcome to the red light corner, baby. We have the oil lamp in the back, and once I'm settled, we are going to start getting this place looking elegant, sexy, an homage to the ladies of our past. I'm looking forward to what I can make happen with an actual desk and a formal place to record. This is very exciting for me. I hope you guys are just as excited. I hope you guys are... New chair. We got new things, okay? So a little bit of a learning curve for everyone. But I hope you guys are excited to see where this new recording studio takes us and what we can accomplish in this space. I'm very excited. Okay, now that I'm done gushing over the move, I would like to say we are trying a new way of recording this podcast. I hope this goes the way I want it to, but this is my first trial run. I've done a lot of practice runs with this, so I'm hoping that we are in a space where nothing goes wrong, fingers crossed. But like I said, this is kind of the trial run, so if things don't look good or the video is off somehow, or if the sound or audio is weird, please be patient. I will do my best to fix it for the next round, and we will slowly but surely get it to where we are wanting. But I have changed the way we are recording completely. Back in my old place where I was recording, was doing it on a camera and had to reset and restart every 20 minutes. And I don't know why I was doing that. I had all the ability with my webcam to record through OBS and have the audio and camera record together. I have been recording on my camera, recording the video on my camera, recording the audio on my GarageBand, and I don't know when it finally just clicked to me that I was being a dumbass, but it finally did, and I was like, oh, guess what? You're being a dumbass. Let's do this better. And so here we are. It took me a minute to get everything situated, but audio and video are recording. There's no resetting. There's no stopping and starting. And we're just here. We're here. We're just in a flow. And that's very exciting. So yeah, this should be a very good thing. Only good things coming for paying for it. Anyways, welcome back. I'm happy to be here. I hope you are just excited. And today we will be diving back into the opulent and seductive world of Storyville. Today is the day to find your first house. The wait, the tease has finally ended. Come along, it's time. Now that you have gotten the lay of the lands and you have spent the first couple of days of your visit touring the district and getting an understanding of what Storyville is all about, you feel comfortable in this world of sin. So now it's time to get to the part that we've all been here for, the ladies of the evening. Though there is no way you will be able to make your way through all the district has to offer, you were able to make a good impression on the mayor of Storyville, Tom Anderson. So you have your in. It seems the ladies are curious about the new guy in town as well. Now, at the ball of two well-known gentlemen, you find yourself the center of attention. I know you have your mind set on a few, and we will get there, I promise. First, take this in. You'll never be at the ball again with all these ladies. The true reason that Tom, Billy, and all the other men like them, who were able to capitalize on the women who made it all happen. Had it not been for the women who were willing to sell their wares, Tom and all those like him would be just another man who faded into history. Sure, he could have still been a brilliant businessman because these were white men who we are talking about. But would they have made a name for themselves? Would they have made history? I don't think so. Without the queens, without the district, who really cares about a couple more businessmen? They are nothing without the district. Without the queens, you have no district. Without the district, you have no mayor of Storyville. So yeah, Tom has power, money, and influence. However, he has none of that without the women who ran their own businesses. Because don't get it twisted. Tom walks around a white man who has money, privilege, but it is the ladies who have the true power, influence, and the money maker when it comes to the business of sin, even if the society at the time didn't allow them all to see it. So with that, you know what time it is. Grab yourself a cocktail, a mocktail, a coffee, whatever you fancy. Today, it's early, but I couldn't come back without having a drink with y'all. So we are going to do the Martin House Brewing Bock Slide Toadies Texas Bock. Look at this can. If you're watching the video version, look at this can. It screams everything I need it to. Okay? It screams everything I need it to. I'm a medium beer drink girly, so I had to try these. Someone told me about them and I was like, oh, I have to try them. They're very good. They're a little on the sweeter caramely side. So I don't tend to drink sweeter drinks, but this one is not bad. Anyways, I'm going to pour it into a glass, but hear this crack, some ASMR for us. Ooh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I've got not the right glass, but a pint nonetheless, and we'll Go for it. Pour your beers hard and fast, baby. That's the head you need. People are scared of a little head, but I'm telling you, it's all about the head when it comes to the beers. All right. Cheers, 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 cheers. And with that, let me introduce you to the ladies of the district. If you go and grab every edition of the Blue Books throughout the district's life, you would be able to see that at least 300 plus ladies were working within the district on any given time. However, that number was far, far below the true number of women working within the district. History likes to point the finger at the girls working the cribs, using them as their weapon to prove the life of a working girl was a life full of sin, depression, anxiety, and true depravity. However, if you take a look at some of the girls and ladies working within the crib, you may very well find something that would surprise you. Women coming to work their own little business, they open their shop, they make their money, their shop closes, and they go home. They pay their shop rent, their bills, and they make a living. Now, think about a local man who has a small business that he goes in every morning, opens shop, works his hours, closes shop, goes home, pays their shop rent, their bills, and they make a living. Neither wrong, nor different. Just one makes people uncomfortable. Now, another thing history likes to point at as the reason for evil is those have fallen into the life of vice, drugs, escape, which of course did happen to some women who lost themselves. It was not uncommon. Now, the flip side of that are the men who also lost themselves, the gamblers who didn't know how to fold, those who lost themselves to their job, and found themselves into drugs and gambling addictions. Both wrong, both sad, neither different. Just one gets glamorized and the other one shamed. See, both have their risk. That's just life, to be honest. Life doesn't have a specific pathway to the end, so everyone has the ability to split on the path that leads to addiction, drugs, and a life that looks different from the one perceived as the right way to live. However, just because there were ladies who lost themselves in the life of sin, that wasn't the story for every lady who worked in the cribs or the houses that weren't deemed top notch. These women were just regular ladies, working their business, making their money, living their lives, surviving. This is the thing we call life. They were everyday workers and women. They went home at the end of the night to families, cooked dinner, and lived the best life that they were able to in the world that was presented to them. So the amount of women who came in and made their money in the district, it won't ever truly be known. The women in the cribs were the women of the locals. Working within a crib also allowed these ladies to set their own rules, as working in a brothel came with rules from madams. On top of that, working in brothels came with fees and chores and a set of non-negotiable rules that you must follow or you are out. Speaking of the brothels, it is just the name of the game that they are the stars of the show, of the district. They are the reason we are all here, the reason we get to peek into the velvety, silky, sensual world of sin. It's the queens who don't lose themselves, learn the game, and use it to their advantage to gain their own freedom and power. That's the real reason society was scared. Society made them out to be the victims because the women who were gaining their freedom and power It came with a certain type of fear in the men who realized the power of a woman is true and extremely, extremely potent. And I see you have your eye on one of the most powerful of them all in the district, the Diamond Queen. The Diamond Queen, aka Lulu White. Lulu White has noticed your eye and she smiles big at you. A smile that invites you in, an invitation that you cannot ignore. She has a certain kind of lure that brings you in and you find yourself drifting closer and closer to her. Born Lulu Hendley around 1868, by now you know how the story goes. Most of her early days are a mystery to history. In fact, her early days are most likely not nearly as high class and glamorous as her current life is now. Lulu was born on a farm in Alabama only 3 years after slavery ended. That's a hard thought to wrap my mind around as a modern white woman, but it is wild to think that even though slavery had ended, there was still, even today, there's still such crazy racial tensions. Just think about how it was back then, 3 years after. It was just in its infancy, this new building of getting out of such a weird, gross time in history. So it's not likely that she was born on good terms on a farm in Alabama, okay? Lulu was a very light-skinned African-American woman. She was an octoroon. As you are observing her in her element, you can't help but being enthralled by her. In the audience of the men around her, enthralled with her appearance and her eroticism. That was Lulu's brand. She leaned into what made her different and embraced what most of the world around her deemed unworthy, and at times dirty and wrong, but also what they would sexualize and fantasize over. Black women during this time period were always marked as sexual commodities. The world at this point had sex trades called fancy girls. This played directly into the brands she would go on to build. In these markets, the lighter-skinned women were considered high value, the octoroon. Lulu not only embraced and loved her octoroon roots, but she also made her living in the trade of other octoroons. But instead of it being for the gain of these awful men, it was for the gain of the women, the ladies. Lulu allowed these women to take back their power as much as they could and allowed her women to capitalize on it as well. Octoroons. The definition at its basic core is a word that would describe a person in the colonial age that was 1/8 black. Someone with one black grandparent. But that doesn't give you the full picture of what it meant and why it has such a layered meaning in history. So to fully understand Lulu Wright's brand and why it helped her become the Diamond Queen, you have to understand the word she embraced so dearly. Octoroon has a bedded meaning, and like most things in history, it is derived by the darker parts of life. The female octoroon was already a stock character by the 1890s in the world of literature. Her story was always a tragic one because the world forced her story to be a tragic one, as the word octoroon actually told a story about the woman it described. In order for her to be labeled with a title like octoroon, then it meant that her father was always white and the quote-unquote black would come from an enslaved mother. Now, it's important to really drive that point home, that these pairings were almost 100% never consensual. Though these women, the mothers to the babies who we are talking about, were enslaved and no choice in this matter. So we are talking about rape from a white man who, quote unquote, owned these women. They believed that they were their property, so they did as they pleased with them. So the story of the Octoroon is a tragic one, as history is a tragic one. And the babies each time would become lighter and lighter in skin, and these babies would be then taken, sold into slavery. The baby boys would be sold into the slave market, the women forced into a way more disturbing and horrible fate, as they would be then sold into the slave sex trade, where their lineage would be used to raise their value on this market. This cycle continues as the enslaved woman sold, bought, raped, and impregnated, each baby becoming lighter and lighter until they were able to produce a quote-unquote white-looking baby, the Octoroon baby. Their daughters would remain in slavery, and their light skin added to their value in the sexual slave market. So it's very important to grasp that meaning going into Lulu's story. As a modern white privileged woman, I will never be able to fully understand that level of depravity, not just with the men and women who took part in the selling of other women or human beings, but the world to see it and allow it. This is history. Our history. Lulu would use those cards she was given to play the game and win, even when all odds were against her. Lulu White. So we now know Lulu was born in Alabama, but just so you know, Lulu, she's gonna tell you that she's from Jamaica, or maybe it's Cuba this time. Keeping the mystery around her and her girls' origins helped her build her brands of the Octoroon Queen. She wanted the men who visited her house and those who whispered about her to describe her as an exotic beauty, embracing the sexually charged meaning of what it was to be an Octoroon. Using the men's wants, desires, and fantasies to her advantage. Taking back the power of what it meant to be an Octoroon. If you wanted to be with a woman like her, live out that fantasy you so desired, you would have to pay to play, and pay a lot. And it would all be on her and her girls' terms. Lulu arrived in New Orleans with an older gentleman that is believed to have been her stepfather. Although nothing is really known about this man or of the true extent of their relationship, nor the reason for being in New Orleans, we do know that Lulu will go into the game really quickly, like right away, selling her goods in the district. Starting off in the boarding house for quote-unquote colored women. Lulu appears first on the city's directory in 1888, a year after Storyville was first established. She would be listed in a neighborhood that was made of mostly colored female boarding houses and brothels. So during Lulu's building and learning years, Lulu will go on to get a series of pornographic photos done sometime in between the year 1880s and or 1890s. The reason behind these photos are not quite known, as perhaps it was just a financial gain or even an increased publicity. Whatever the reason, though, for the photos, it does seem they have done what they needed to do. Lulu was able to do her thing, and it paid off for her as she landed herself some high-dollar men like an oil man, a railroad tycoon, and a department store owner. Lulu will prove to be very, very ambitious, and she wasn't going to just stop at being a whore to a rich man. She wanted more for herself. She wanted the power, the type of power that wasn't easy to get your hands on as a woman, but also much harder for a colored woman, light-skinned or not. It takes Lulu some failures and learning curves to get success, but she will accomplish that success and the power. And it's the power that she fought so hard for. In fact, it's the power all of these women fought so hard for. Lulu will go on and build her persona of an exotic beauty with beautiful black hair and striking blue eyes. She will also become well known for sporting a bright red wig. It was more than that though. Lulu loved her diamonds, so much so that she will go on to be known as the Diamond Queen. Often some would call her gaudy. However, she loved to shine and show her status as a free and wealthy woman of color. Even if you asked Lulu, she would deny any bit of quote-unquote colored blood in her. Lulu's journey to the top was a fight. She often was getting arrested in her early days in and out of Storyville. It is reported that Lulu was constantly getting in trouble with the law. Though the run-ins with the police weren't going to stop her from making her mark on history. In fact, it may have just helped her right along, as her run-ins put her in the presence of high-powered people. Well, let's just say high-powered men. We gotta call it for what it is. And this would later help her in her career. Lulu will go on to buy her brothel, a mansion on Custom House Street. It's in this era of her life it becomes clear that Lulu is a very effective businesswoman. She is also not afraid or deterred by risk. It was here that her connections and friendships with certain police officers and politicians that she made in her earlier years as a working girl will come in handy. Now, mind you, this mansion she ran was rather elaborate, big, and rich. However, when the property will go and get assessed, it would be assessed so low that it would be tax exempt. That is how people started believing that she had friends in very high places, because it should not have been deemed tax exempt. Her connections would benefit her, helping her grow in this district. With this and the ability to land multiple high-dollar men, she was able to stockpile cash to save for the true brothel of her dreams, bringing her out of the unofficial segregated area right smack in the middle of the district, the area where the top of the top madams ran their establishments. Welcome to Montgomery Hall. Located at 235 Basin Street, right down in the prime area of Storyville, this 4-story house, which Lulu got at $40,000, and in today's money, that would be about $1.3 million. This house was beautiful and elegantly decorated. She sourced the finest art for the time, and she made sure to put Tiffany stained glass windows throughout. Can you imagine? I cannot, but can you imagine? It had a very elaborate swirly staircase, and just in case you needed assistance getting up, she had an elevator in her home as well. And remind you, this is not in the modern era, so that was so not very common. She made sure it sparkled and shined just as much as she did. It was known to have 5 sumptuous parlor rooms within her mansion. One of those parlor rooms where she entertained her many guests was known to be a mirrored room. Her mansion also had 15 bedrooms, each one with its own bathroom, which nowadays standard is a big deal. Like each room having its own bathroom, kind of unheard of. But back then, well, that showed she had money and lots of it because, again, this is not the modern time, and indoor plumbing and indoor bathrooms was very new for this time period. So to have one was status. To have 15 was a whole nother ball game. Lulu was also one of the only ladies we know of throughout Storyville's time to publish her own brochure for her opulent house. It was basically like what you would find in the Blue Book, but just focusing on her house and the ladies who thrived within and lived within. Now, it's important to note that Lulu, even though she had her own brochure, wasn't excluded from the Blue Books. Tom Anderson did have high respects for Lulu because he often would feature her in full-length spreads in their Blue Books. Let's talk about the ladies she would bring in. Lulu was catering to a fantasy of interracial sex. So Lulu only hired women who were quadroons or octoroons. She, of course, would only let the finest ladies live and board within her house, which is something I feel like I say about all of the ladies who we are talking about here on Paying for It, which is kind of true. They were only allowing beautiful, attractive females to work within their houses. They were running a business selling sex. So, of course, they are trying to bring in the ladies who are going to sell that fantasy of their parlor room, whatever each lady's fantasy was. And for Lulu Wright, it was the fantasy of this kind of like socially enact, almost very derived from a very dark side of history, but she was flipping it on its side, you know? Lulu, though, was only hiring the finest and most beautiful girls of mixed race, allowing white men only. And that's very important. These top-notch houses only catered to white men. To come and engage in with this fantasy that was a huge part of the world during this time. She was known to keep 40 women at all times. So, you know, she had a big place and she had 40 women working, rotating, you know? It wasn't like all 40 women, once it was open, were, you know, doing their thing always. It's not like that. There was a lot of build-up, a lot of entertaining, a lot of kind of rotating, but also everyone had their own job. There was lots of things going. There's a lot of movement in what a night looked like at a brothel. Lulu really played into the world's racial anxieties of her time, really putting a target on her back. Lulu was a big part of Storyville, becoming somewhere you could mingle with other races. Montgomery Hall became a place that mixed-raced women, black jazz men, and white men were intermingling, making connections. This will earn her a lot of hatred from the racist moralist of her time. Lulu was often getting in trouble for breaking the Jim Crow laws. And this is something I never even heard of until recently, but basically this was a law that prohibited black and whites from drinking in the same establishment. This was also the same law that prevented women from working in a place that sold alcohol. Could you imagine? I'm a bartender. Well, I manage now, but I started as a bartender, and I would not have a job or a career if these laws still existed today. But yeah, so she really allowed men and women, and not just white men and mixed ladies, but she hired black jazz players, and they would all come in. And when you came into the brothel, it was like all those anxieties of the world and everything were kind of set aside. She didn't allow that in her house. Everyone in her house was there to have a good time. And this then kind of allowed white men to start to even sometimes build relationships with some of these jazz players who they would drink together. They would hang out. They would communicate. It allowed some people to start seeing the world outside of it allowed some men to start seeing other men of different colors outside of what the world wanted them to think. It allowed people to start to build connections with people the world did not want them to build connections with. And so she was constantly getting in trouble for these. Now, does that also play into the hypocrisy of the world? Yeah, because when we go on to talk about other ladies of Storyville, were they getting in trouble for the Jim Crow laws? Probably not, even though they were doing the exact same thing. It was Lulu who was getting in trouble because they were frightened by Lulu because of what she represented, what she was able to do, and the power she was able to gain in the fantasy and brand she was building. This was so part of Lulu's whole brand, though, owning it and turning the racial anxieties and fantasies and making it her own. This, though, does allow her to be the enemy of the newspapers. Often they had her name in the papers complaining about her establishment. They didn't like it. They didn't like what she offered, what she was selling, and they especially didn't like how successful she was at doing it. They didn't like the idea of mixing races in an enjoyable setting. They often attacked her for that, but they also attacked her for her pricing of her parlor. When you went to Lulu's, you were paying top dollar, baby. This was another subtle way that society liked to put her under attack. Complaining about her pricing when Lulu offered something that wasn't easily available now, no matter how much the world around her wanted her to stop, the draw of what she was offering was too powerful for those to resist it. Because don't forget, in this time of history, sleeping with someone of color was only okay if it was a man engaging in a sexual act with a female that was under his power. So, the fantasy she was selling was riddled with this dark side of the world, but she was really flipping it and claiming it as their own, taking this fantasy that was riddled with seedy backstory and flipping it on the men who created it. Because now slavery is abolished and the sexual slave trade and things are starting to no longer be accepted or allowed. And so that doesn't take away the wants and the fantasy of what was created by these men. It just gave the women the power. You want it? Baby, you can have it, but you're going to pay for it. And it's going to be at my control. It's going to be under my power. You don't get to come into my house with my ladies and try to own it. No. We own you when you're here. We own your fantasy because you can have it, but you're going to have to pay for it. And clearly it really worked for Lulu White. Well, she did very, very, very well for herself. The Diamond Queen at its finest. Waiting in the main parlor of Montgomery Hall, you look around in all of its beauty and its timeless elegance. You're nervous and excited. Lulu was such a showstopper at the ball. You can't wait to see how she is in her own element. You look up as she starts to descend the stairs, and your breath is taken away. She had this beautiful black hair with stunning blue eyes. Of course, dressed in the finest fashion of her time, her diamonds catching the light of the chandelier, perfectly placed to make her entrance just that more vivid and sparkling. Then she smiled, and her teeth were sparkly just as well, with silver and diamond caps all in her mouth. Lulu White often said that she had the largest privately owned diamond collection. Whether that's true or not is never really going to be known, but she sure did love to say that that was the case. The girl loved her fucking diamonds. One man would be quoted saying, "To see her at night is like witnessing the electrical display of St. Louis Exposition." Lulu wasn't just someone who loved her diamonds. It was clear that she was an extremely smart woman when it came to business, but what doesn't get talked about was how really well-read Lulu White was, how uncommon that was for a woman, but especially a woman of color. She loved her literature. But also, she loved her music and often hired some of the best jazz players around. She often had Jelly Roll Morton playing in her bordello to entertain the patrons, but also herself, as she adored staying up to date with the latest and newest music of her time. Lulu was so popular that she had some of the top jazz artists of her time come and play for her house. Louis Armstrong will go on to write the Montgomery Hall Stomp. Lulu White also almost became Hollywood's first biggest investor. She had taken a trip to Hollywood and did some networking there. And she had decided that she was going to invest in the first development of filmmaking studio. Trusting one of her longtime boy toys to deliver the money, however, was a mistake. Lulu gave him the cash to bring to one of what would become the largest studios in Hollywood. This man, though, never did show up, and he just faded into history. It is believed that he took the money and ran to start a new life somewhere else. Fading into history, no one truly knows what happened, as it could be exactly as it is believed. Or he could have died, never making it to where he needed to go. Lulu made the decision, though, to not have the presumed theft investigated. Her reasoning behind this decision is a mystery to history, but we can only speculate that maybe it was because of the reason and the way she got her own money, the way she made her career, that she knew that outside of the district, it could not be investigated the way it needed to be. She probably figured this was a waste of her time. She kind of had to wipe her hands clean of that money and process that hurt on her own. It would have been very interesting, though, to see how that would have changed the start of Hollywood. And had Lulu White been able to deliver the money and become a top investor of Hollywood, that would be extremely interesting to see how that would have changed the history of Hollywood today. This made her an extremely popular Madam of Storyville. She was able to have intelligent conversations with high-dollar men coming through her parlor house. She understood business and was a high-dollar investor, a woman on her own right. So men respected her because, once you get money, men start to respect you. But she was also still able to provide a good time, a place for those men to come and relax and enjoy the vibes she was creating with her mansion. Lulu, well, she's a great host, and long has your anxiety left your body. The drinks are flowing, and the girls, well, they are just everything. And with that, you are led upstairs with a beautiful lady. Now, that, my friends, isn't the end of Lulu's story. We will be checking back in with Lulu and her life as we travel through Storyville. But your fun isn't done yet. You have other ladies who are waiting to get to know who the new man in town is. It seems as if you have been making quite an impression as you have made your way through Storyville. Thank you again for being here for episode 38 to get to know Lulu White. I know my recording patterns are really scattered and have been all over the place. I'm tired of speed running this, and I want the ladies' stories to be told correctly. And now that I've moved and I'm settling in, I believe we are on the upward momentum. So I will be taking my time telling these ladies' stories, but I do plan on getting into a pattern that makes more sense, okay? They deserve that. So yeah, I will be taking my time telling these ladies' stories because they deserve that. But now that I'm fully moved and things will be getting back to normal, so we can too also get back to normal on paying for it, which I don't think we've ever had a normal, but hopefully with new space and new setting and new things that we can actually make that happen. And hopefully we can get onto a much more consistent scale as well. I hope you consider subscribing, liking if you're tempted to go on this sensual journey of learning about the baddest bitches of history. And I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time with the next queen of Storyville. And until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.
I got something between my legs that'll make a dead man come. Oh, that. I got something between my legs that'll make a dead man come. Oh.